Super Castlevania IV is one of those games I played back in the day, but never the whole way through. This weekend, I set up the Super Nintendo Mini on the computer desk to see what I could play on stream. I don't know what made me choose Super Castlevania IV, but I couldn't be happier with my choice. I want to share my newfound love for this game with you all, and if you want to support the channel, please like, subscribe, and share the video. As always, let's get right into it. Super Castlevania IV released in 1991 on the Super Nintendo, and it's a remake of the original Castlevania released on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Those Castlevania games on the NES are what I grew up with, relentlessly difficult action platformers that kept you coming back for more, time and time again, because the games were that well made. When you died, it wasn't the game's fault, you just had to get better. And it couldn't hurt that those games' soundtracks were some of the best on the system. Naturally, I would be curious to check out the next game on stronger, more powerful hardware, Super Castlevania IV, a 16-bit romp through Dracula's castle. And super, this game definitely is. Now with an opening cinematic explaining that Simon Belmont, the main character, sets out on a quest to defeat Dracula, who has awoken from a 100-year sleep. And there it is, the classic vampire killer himself in front of the gate that leads into Dracula's castle. Kind of. You see, Simon's journey into the castle is an extensive one, and that's my first delight about the game. Give me diverse levels, not just random levels, but individually, uniquely themed levels with a rhyme and a reason as to why I'm playing them in that order. And that's what we get in Super Castlevania IV. You don't start off immediately in the castle. To me, that would have implied that the level design would have been somewhat limited as far as what set pieces you'll see. But in this case, we get a far larger array of set pieces. Instead, Super Castlevania makes a gradual progression towards Dracula's castle, with stage 1 taking place in a ruined mansion, which looks so cool with walls coming apart and exposed to the outside elements with overgrowth everywhere. The first thing you'll notice is that the graphics are large and detailed in this game. We were used to a tiny Simon and tiny enemies before this game, but the NES did its best with its limited color palette, so we won't take that away from it. The sprites and backgrounds look meticulously detailed with shadows and light sources applied to them. I love good sprite work, as does any self-respecting retro gamer. Stage 2 takes you a bit closer into the castle, venturing across the Transylvanian wildlands and into a cave, or ancient ruins of stage 3, with one of my favorite sections, 3-2, with its lush green terrain as water falls from above. Simon must leap behind streams and over crumbling bridges into the outer keep, a much more heavily guarded area with rotating platforms that see you fall to your death. Simon gets a break in the action in the castle court, a fairly short stage with no boss. Finally leading into the castle halls with stage 6, now we're indoors in what you'd expect from a Castlevania game. Red floors, silver walls, and axe-throwing knights. The dungeon and treasury stages have perhaps some of the nicest looking pixel art in the game, with not a pixel wasted. Every inch of the dungeon's area has a unique detail to it, from acid dripping down, leaking pipes, and a scrolling background with skulls and cobwebs to remind you that you're in a dreary place. The treasury stage glistens the whole time, since it takes place around jewels and gold and ghostly spirits ascending upwards. If you can't tell by now, Super Castlevania IV specializes in delivering atmosphere, even when going back to play today. That's due to the developers' attention to detail when designing the look of Castlevania IV, in addition to the stellar music in this game. Indeed, I don't think I would have beat this game 7 times in one weekend if it wasn't for the music. Stage 1 hits you with a now classic Simon Belmont theme, fast-paced, heroic song which frankly doesn't compare to the rest of the tracks in the game. It's not that I don't like Simon's theme song, but it's just that the rest of the game's soundtrack fits the levels perfectly, with not one bad tune in the bunch. Each stage's music goes for a subdued, half melancholy, half rhythmic approach. By that I mean each song starts slow and builds to a catchy hook, then back again. They fit the levels super well because, going back to what I said earlier, Simon's adventure into the castle is a lonely one, taking place in areas no regular person in this time period wants to find themselves in. Remember, it's the Belmont lineage who is destined to defeat Dracula whenever he returns. Regular civilians aren't succumbed to the ugly, fearful reality of what goes on behind the walls of Dracula's real estate. Super Castlevania IV's music hits you with that sadness, and it also hits you with the upbeat sections to remind you how much of a hero Simon is for going on this adventure alone. The quality of sound on Super Nintendo was never impressive in my opinion. I always felt that Super Nintendo was a little too bass heavy and needed some more high end. But the Konami Kokiha Club, which is a team of composers for Konami, did a great job using the Super Nintendo's sound chip. Music sounds bright and clear, opposed to the muffled sound that I was expecting. I'm not saying all Super Nintendo music sounds bad. I know I'm in the minority and most people love the Super Nintendo sound chip, but I digress. So it's the joining of those things, the story, music, and graphics that hooked me when playing Castlevania IV. We haven't even talked about Simon's improved combat abilities, which are divisive among fans of the series, with some saying Simon is too nimble this go around. The major difference in Simon's arsenal this time around is his ability to whip in 8 directions, on ground and in midair. The reason this is important is because in past games, Simon could only strike forward, so lining up enemies was much harder to do. Now Simon could be a lot more reactive to enemies around him, whipping them from many more locations on screen. It also helps that his whip is much longer than in previous games. The whip could also be dangled out in front of Simon to act as a shield against projectiles, something I found very useful against bosses who relied on projectiles. In addition to dangling the whip, it could also be spun around by using the D-pad to reach enemies at a distance or create another shield of some kind. Did you think that wasn't enough functionality out of the whip? Simon's whip could also be used to latch onto grapple points around stages to swing himself onto platforms and other obstacles. That's what I'm talking about. If your game's main weapon is a whip, then make sure to make that whip as useful as you can. There's a reason the whip is considered the legendary vampire killer whip. Returning are the sub-weapons found in earlier games. It wasn't until about my 3rd playthrough that I started using sub-weapons for bosses to kill them faster. Bosses in this game are not difficult. Their patterns can be learned quickly and sub-items finish them off fast. Sub-items are assigned to the R button this time instead of pressing up and attack like in the original. Sub-items like the axe or cross really aren't that useful during normal play, as the whip can pretty much take care of enemies if not faster than sub-items can. Simon controls a bit stiff at first glance due to his lumbering walk animation, but he is actually a very responsive character. We went over the satisfying and quick whip mechanics and sub-items, but Simon's jump is also a bit controllable in mid-air, which I welcome 100%. I hated the jump from earlier games, which didn't allow for any adjustments while in mid-air. This made Simon so susceptible to danger while in the air hopping between platforms. Now Simon can steer away from enemies or retreat from a jump you weren't ready for. His jumping also improved in that he can now jump onto stairs, resulting in an overall quicker Simon. All these improvements make for an easier Castlevania experience when compared to the other games in the series. The game isn't a cakewalk though. Many enemies and bosses have random behavior that can't be predicted. Also, the Stage 8 dungeon area is one of the most punishing stages, with spike insta-kills everywhere and disappearing platforms. Any death here and you'll need to repeat the stage. Once you take the time to learn the ins and outs, Super Castlevania IV morphs into a new experience. I know Konami wanted the original Castlevania to feel like a horror Hollywood blockbuster, but I think they nailed it with 4 even more so. Now when I play through the game having mastered it, I feel fully immersed as if I'm Simon himself, backed by my music and gorgeous visuals. Subsequent playthroughs are no longer about mastering the difficulty. Instead, I play to experience the game for the complete package of an action game that it is. Only possible because Konami made this a labor of love. Think of it like watching your favorite movie over and over because it's comforting to do so. You know what to expect, but you like how the movie was made, you like how the story plays out, the actors, and the soundtrack. That's what Super Castlevania IV is for me. A comfy adventure into Dracula's castle. It doesn't have to be the most difficult in the series for it to be the best. For me, it's the most polished and complete Castlevania experience, and that's why I love this game. I hope you enjoyed this review and you go out and play this game immediately if you haven't done so already. If you could support the channel by subscribing and liking the video, that'd be great. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.